Yo guys, I'm making a new underground sound design pack for you guys. It will be free. Just join us on Discord, discord.gg/busyworksbeats. And so we have a sound here. I'm not going to overly talk through this. We're going to be sound designing, but I just want to show you guys that I'm building sounds from scratch here. I learned a lot from Nest Acoustics. I recommend you guys go buy his course, Nest Acoustics. He has a really well done Serum 2 course. All right, so I'm going to start from scratch just to show you guys how we got here. So again, I'm not going to overly explain everything in this video, but just to start off, we have a sawtooth. We're going to put, and again, this is from Nest Acoustics training. So pull the randomness to 0. We're going to resample this down 10 semitones, or excuse me, 10 cents is what I meant to say. We're going to resample this into Oscillator B, okay? And basically it will have a wavetable instead of just a single frame. So now it has a wavetable. So if you click here, it cycles through the entire cycle. Okay. And then basically we can change this back to 0. And I'm not sure if he changed the randomness or not. So I'll just pull these both back to 0. I can't remember exactly what he did there. And what else? And then basically some cool techniques I learned from him. I'm not trying to give away all his sauce, but he gave away some dope sauce. So firstly, in the LFO, we can use this as an envelope, which most people don't use it as an envelope. So let's switch it to envelope mode. But then you can also right click to modulate the curvature, and let's modulate it by a random thing. So let's do note on random. So every note, it will trigger a random value. And let's right click this other curve, modulate it by LFO bus 2, and the note on random again. So basically it's picking random values for these things. And then we can have this envelope control different things like the cutoff filter, and different things. I'm going to go to the mod matrix and make this what's called unipolar so that I can control the exact range. And then we're going to have oscillator B and A go through the same filter to add a little saturation. Now most people overlook this drive knob. It's really good for bass. Let's turn the phase back up. I want to see if this does anything. All right, so now what we need to do is grab an LFO and drag it over top the wavetable position and basically have it cycle through these frames. And what I'll do is my favorite thing to do is right click, go to note on alternative, and then now oscillator B pans left and right every time I hit a note. It plays either on the left or the right. So it creates a wide sound without needing to add a bunch of plugins. So let's also make sure we go to the global tab, turn on the ultra mode. Another thing for the underground is to pull the tuning down to like 427. In this case, we're going to do 430, but we've done it before and it matches 427 at Omnisphere's tuning. So I'm not sure this is 100% accurate, 430. So that's how we got to this sound here. And then from here, we can just add, let's do, where is it at? Distortion. Now, my new thing I learned from the underground, not necessarily Nest Acoustics, is to distort a sawtooth until it sounds like a square wave using tube distortion. So this is just something I learned from the underground kids. But we can also modulate that. So let's modulate that by velocity, for example, and then wherever the pointer is, let's consider that the max value, and then let's turn the values down. And I guess because everything's the same velocity, it doesn't change. So let me add a higher velocity. So higher velocity gives you lower values in this case. So let's do it the other way. Let's just give it a range. So basically I need to set the max range. So the tricky part is this visual doesn't give you like the little blue bar. So we're gonna have to do this in the matrix and set the max value for the distortion here, and then set the minimum value at 0. So basically in the matrix, I'm just setting how high do I want to turn that drive effect. Now because the notes don't have any velocity, what I will do is use a tool in FL Studio called Humanize. To add more velocity, we're going to mess with the start time. Just turn this on 0 so that it doesn't do anything for the start time, just the velocity. So So now each note triggers a different amount of velocity. Let's just pull the mix level back so it's not taking up the entire sound here. And then we could do the same thing, sending the filter signal over to bus 1. In bus 1, let's add a reverb. Let's do a plate reverb, and then we could modulate this by, let's just do velocity. So basically we're creating like a gated effect based on velocity. Or we could do an envelope that might make more sense. So let's actually right click to remove this, and let's add this envelope, because then it has a for sure ending time. And now we can exaggerate the reverb texture. You can barely hear it, however, so let's see if we can copy this. It looks like we could save this shape. Let's save it as moving saw. I don't know if it has the same modulation. Let's go to LFO2. Go to user. Let's go to moving saw. Then we have to right click, we have to modulate it by the same stuff. So let's do LFO bus 1, and this one I think had LFO bus 2. And because we're gonna right click and remove this and just use LFO2, this way we have different control. So I'm gonna set a minimum value, that way it doesn't go to 0. And then set this to envelope. Now we could be cool and actually add it under retrigger mode and give it a rhythm, or free mode. So it kind of keeps rhythm with the tempo, but it doesn't reset every note we hit. And then we could do stuff like dotted eighths. We're just being creative here. Let's slow this down a little bit, it's a little too fast. I forgot we're on the bus, so the bus should have 100% mix level. And we could be more creative. We could add delays in here. So we need a faster delay because this is carrying the wrong note. Now we're just adding that little detail. I think in here, let me see. There's a way, okay, we can do what's called oscillator mapping. So people don't realize you can have a sub oscillator only operate in the subdomain. So for example, let's say you only want it to trigger at this specific note, which I don't know if we can click those notes. So let's say I only want the sub to occur from this region and down. That way it doesn't clash with the chord. So now I can add a sawtooth here, add an octave lower, and then add a sub bass note underneath. And we're gonna pull it up. And now we essentially have a different. And if I go up one, we don't hear the saw anymore, that sub bass. Okay, because we've separated out the oscillator mapping. Now what we're gonna do is do the opposite for oscillator A through C, and basically have it so that only the sub plays that note envelope. So there's no clashing in the notes. And let's save this before I forget. Let's call this saw pluck bass combo. And again, I want to shout out Nest Acoustics. His course is very good. Like the first video already gave me like 1,000 tips. And what we're going to do to liven this up to, and like I said, sound designers, we don't just make a sound and start over from scratch. We tweak it and then save it as a new preset. So let's tweak this. Let's add a compressor, multi-band. And let me add the bass notes over here. We're gonna have the sub go through the filter, so it's not as bitey. Let's save that, just that small change. Now let's turn down the reverb delays a little bit. Let's dial in this multi-band compression. So instead of looking at it like tan and green, I look at it now as the black things in between. It makes it a lot easier. So it starts with the high frequencies. How much highs do we want? And then usually the bass isn't that loud, so we turn these down. Just depends on what you guys are like building. And then I like to pull the attack and release down to add more of this like smeary sound, this digital sound. It adds like this over top of the sound. We could set the release, different ways. I'm just let's turn the mix level for the reverb down. It's just too loud. Another thing I like to do is go to the LFO and select from the drop down, go to sample and hold and drag this over the octave. And then I'll go to the matrix, make it unipolar. And then set a range, in this case 1 octave. So basically the random sample and hold is like a pulse wave that just randomly changes its voltage. And so now this oscillator B will go up and down an octave randomly. Let's also give oscillator A some movement, but this one I want it to be a little more of a like rhythmic LFO instead of alternative notes. We're gonna put this on free mode so it just keeps panning by itself, then pull in the range. I also want to add the sample and hold to the fine tune of oscillator A and just pull the range into about 30 cents up and down. Adds a nice detune. Alright, so now let's call this octave. So see how we're making small tweaks and then it applies to the sound here. Let's add the noise oscillator. Now noise can modulate different things. Let's do FM. This might be too much. I'm just letting you guys hear the modulation. And we're gonna slow it down. So now it's going really slow and it's a randomized LFO. And then we can pull the range in to a very small amount. Then we could change the filter type. That's another way to get different tones. I'll switch this to different comb filters. I think they added one in here. Yeah, here it is, called a scream filter. So if you turn up the scream amount, it's like that massive from the plugin called Massive. Not hearing it much on this sound here. I think if you play low notes, let's see. Why it's not. Okay, so depending on how you move the cutoff, let's make this monophonic. So let's drop these down an octave to make this a bass. Oh, okay, so it's in the drive. Alright, so for the drive, we're going to modulate this by the velocity so that how hard you hit the notes determines how that operates. And then we just have to turn up the amount. So let's set the minimum value so it's not all the way turned up. And then we're going to have the velocity. Depending on how hard you hit the note, determines if you get that tone. You can also set the sensitivity for the velocity. So basically, when you make this curve more convex, it means you can play softer notes and it will perceive it as louder. So it triggers the envelope faster, but you could do the opposite, making it concave. You have to hit really hard for the keys to trigger. So this is like a safety mechanism. Like you really have to slam on the keys to, so this shape is just up to you guys. So we're going to turn it to where it's a little bit more, I don't know why it's not letting me do it. I think I messed up. Okay, here we go. So you got to hit control. Let's just turn it down as a safety mechanism. And let's take it off. Let's see what happens if we do polyphonic. Let's actually not do that. Never mind. All right, so what we're going to do is take the bass, copy it. We're going to clone this plugin so that we can hear the bass separate from the chords on top. And this will help us sound design a little bit. So let's do this. Let's turn this back to the sawtooth one. All right, so now let's see. All right, so something else needs to change outside of just, oh, it looks like velocity didn't change. So we can also, trying to think how to do this. Let's make an envelope. I think there is an envelope over the cutoff. Let's lower the cutoff. We need to make this longer. So let's figure out which. And then we could set the velocity amount. So this also changes the perceived tuning. Let's just turn the scream amount down for now. You guys can modulate that if you want. And now we're going to stack this sound with the sawtooth. So now we can hear how it's kind of hard to stack these sounds. We have to put them in their frequency ranges. So for now, I'm just going to go to the effect, add an EQ, and just shave off the bottom end. That way it doesn't clash with the bass. So here you have to tune the screaming frequency. So I'm debating how I want to do this. I do want something to move the drive amount. Let's right click and modulate this by what's called the note index, meaning the numbers, or the voice index, meaning how many times we hit a note. it changes per time I hit it. So first hit, second hit, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and then it repeats. It's like a step ladder. And then that way we can control. As you guys can see, every time we hit a note, it pushes to the next step. So let's read this modulation. Alright, now to add a little dimension here. To add the hyper dimension, let's turn off the hyper is basically just unison. That dimension, so it feels like it's coming from a room. Let's review this compressor. Let's save this as the bass. Alright, now let's go to the main sound and just make sure these sounds blend a little bit. Forgot these, let's go back. Alright, so let's go to this one. Make sure the tuning is the same, 430. Let's also try the arpeggiator. Now a lot of underground, they do it in triplets, but because we have like so many notes that aren't threes, sounds like a pretty cool bounce. We could also add octave shifts. It's a pretty cool sound. Trying to think when the octave goes up. Wonder if there's a way to add like a delay, but then have it trigger based on the frequency of the sound. I don't know if that's a thing. So let's see here. This may or may not be a thing, so don't quote me on this step. For the mix level, we're gonna right click, and I wanna see if we can trigger it by like the note number. Okay, so that should work. So based on the frequency, it turns the level up. So I like the effect. It's just a little busy, but let's save this first before we start messing with stuff. So Serum is definitely the industry standard in terms of sound design. This thing is the best plugin, period, for sound design. Now we gotta, let's filter out the responses so it's not so overwhelming. So notice I'm saving all these little tweaks to the sound. Let's give the bass a little more unison, a little more spread. Let's turn off any dimension effects. So now the unison. I feel like we can add more distortion in here. Got another oscillator. I don't know why I can't hear this sound. Hold on. Oh, duh. Okay, so these sounds aren't even playing because only the sub's playing. I was wondering why I couldn't hear the sound. I'm thinking I'm doing something, meanwhile it's not even playing. That's because the oscillator mapping. So let's pull this back. I forgot that was even on. All right, so now this is doing all types of stuff. All right, so now we gotta turn these levels down because I'm not sure what it will sound like. Let's turn back the distortion. So what I'm doing now is just adding more voices in to the bass. Also, I want some movement on this saturation amount, so let's add an LFO with a small range and make it go slow and have it do free roam but time sync. Same thing over to this tube distortion. Let's go see through the filter. Let's do it like a square octave, something different. And let's change the semitones to 7 so it does a perfect fifth. Gonna move the cutoff. Let's add some unison to this. Now this has that distorted vibe because we added that square. Without it, I guess to opening the filter. But the square at the perfect fifth adds that like video game vibe. And then let's give it the sample and hold octave. Let's give it a wider range though. And let's modulate this by the note index, the voice index, and just turn the level down. So it increases its aggression over time. Save that. So it's all these like micro distortions using square waves that total the sound here. It's pretty full sound. I can't see it going any further than this though. Add dimension back in just to see if that adds anything. Let's add a phaser in here. Let's call this phase. So see how we're just stacking little decisions, saving. That's pretty much how this goes. Let's go to the let's change out the distortion type. Let's do a warp instead. Let's do like mirror. Same over here. So again, I learned a lot of this from Nest Acoustics. He's just super fire with his sound design. See what. So this sound is so big, the noise doesn't do anything really, except modulate the frequency. Let's also use the noise to modulate Oscillator C. And then have that based off of velocity. And then just set the range of modulation in the matrix. So for example, I could have it set to 100%, but then we could use what's called an aux source. And this, I never understood what it did. Basically, you could set a range and then have that range expand based on something else. That's the easy way to think of it. So I could have it on voice index and then have the voice index increase the range. So now it's adding these little like wobbly pitch artifacts in there. Yeah, I can't see a way that this sounds any cooler. So let's see how many presets we have so far. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 presets. 13 presets based off of 2 instances of Serum. So like I said, when you guys are sound designing, that's how we actually go about it. We don't start fresh every single time necessarily. So let's go back to this arpeggiator and see what, let's twist this in a different way. First, let's change the waveform. Let's do sine waves, and we're gonna reset this. And just turn this off for now. We're gonna resample this. Now I don't know if it changes because we have the modulation on, but let's resample to B from A. I don't know if it looks like it got modulated. It's gonna be interesting using this. Let's right click, let's change the mode to ratio. Now we're gonna go to FM from B over to the oscillator A. And just use some FM synthesis. That's basically what we have to do now is check the wavetables. We need to go in the opposite direction, so gotta find what the thing that is modulating it. Let's just go to, where is it at? All right, so we're looking for a B wavetable position. Here it is here. All right, so we're going the right direction. I don't know why it's not visually showing it. I guess it's going too fast. So let's slow it down a little bit. I still don't see the modulation on the screen. I'm not sure why. Okay, now I can see. So now it should be going front to back. So I think because we have all these effects, like the, I forgot what we had on the sound, like the sample and hold. I think that's why this thing is showing the way it is. So we might have to remove that modulation. Let's do that. Remove, set it back to -10. Phase to 0. Now again, it's probably because I have this pan knob on. I'm not sure if that influences our printing of this, so I have no idea. Again, you guys can go study Nest Acoustics. He has the dope courses about it. So now let's do the same thing. Resample to B. It should be a sine wave, but again, we're getting this kind of modulated looking thing. I think it's just all these decisions that we made stacking up, so we're just gonna use it as a high frequency. Instead of it moving, let's just keep it still. Let's go to the pencil tool. Let's add in custom harmonics here. Add that second and third harmonic. Let's turn the output down on the oscillator B. Let's see if we can warp this and see if that influences the modulation. And let's give this warp. Alright, so that changes the pitch perception. So it's a subtle difference, but it's doing something. It's like, what else can we do? Let's add oscillator C. Let's take the sub out of the filter and then detune the sub from the oscillator C. and then have this fine tune range drift about 10 cents. And let's have this bipolar drift so it doesn't just go one way. Let's have it up to 20 cents actually. So we're going to hear wave cancellation between the sub and the oscillator C. I'm going to actually reverse what goes through the filter. Now keep in mind we have two filters here, most people don't realize. So let's send the sub bass and the oscillator C through the second filter, and then let's use some kind of custom filter here to create a tone. Let's look for like a comb filter. Trying to find a filter that gives us and then we could have the sample and hold, control the filter cutoff. Let's give it a triplet timing. And now we can change the filter types. So basically we're creating a different style of wave interference between oscillator C and the sub frequency by like manipulating the harmonics in the filter. So it sounds like we're doing collisions that aren't existing in the currently existing collision. So it creates a flangey comb sound basically. Kind of like this. Nice tone. Let's drop it down an octave, see if that adds a vibe. Now let's give everything a small envelope, small little bit of decay curvature. And a little release, so it has more of a bell kind of ring out. Now let's switch the octaves here. Now one of my favorite things to do is go plus 19, so that's 1 octave plus 7, and 31. So what's 31? That'd be 3 octaves minus, so that's 36 minus 5. Basically adding perfect fifths. In this sound it doesn't really add much. Alright, let's modulate these with note on alternative. I think these are cool, but they're just too high up. Let's also add some unison. Let's go to the effects. Let's rebalance this sound here. Turn off this delay. Now let's pull up the attack, and we can do the same thing. Right click, modulate this. Let's do note on random. Let's do this. Okay, let's do note on random and then go to the matrix to set the range. So it's not as like up and down, sharp up and downs. We can do the same thing with the decay. To change out like the pluckiness. So it's almost like adding a random expander to the sound. Let's save this one. Let's call it saw random pluck. Let's take off the arpeggio as well. And now we can hear all like the fine-tuned differences. Oh, I forgot to tune this back to 0. So something's like slightly flat. I can't figure out what it is yet. Alright, so it's the sawtooth. So we can also have it go through this filter in series. So in addition to, let's do that to tone some of these movements down. Something just seems like a little bit detuned. I think it might be this mirror effect. This sounds a little dull compared to our other sounds. So let's just get rid of this forced kind of wavetable. Let's go back to the default patches. Let's do a basic sine wave. Then let's add those harmonics back in. Pull away any unison. Let's go back to the effects. Rebalance the sound a little bit. So the sound, again, not the most shiny sound in the world. Let me see what happens if we take off the filter. And I think I forgot to, okay, that's why the sub is not playing. That was my bad, y'all. Forgot about the oscillator mapping. There we go. Now let's add an arpeggiator. Let's call this arp. Let's mess with this distortion. I didn't do anything. What else can we do to this sound? We could change the ratio. So the higher the ratio, the more metallic the FM synthesis becomes. And then we could also add an envelope over the FM synthesis. So it like creates like a transient. We're just going to call this version the frog version. So the reason I use ARPs is so I can hear the sounds as I'm sound designing and hear all the movement. It's an easy way to sound design. Is to use an arpeggiated chord. Now for my own ear, I'm going to transpose this key just so I don't get too used to that key. Let's go to the pattern mode, transpose this -3. Actually, let's do +6 would be +3 from our original. Now to add. What we're gonna do here is just lower the warp mode and turn the range down. Let's call it less wobbly. We're also gonna add portamento on this bass and add always, so pitch bends to every note. So it goes wow, wow like that. Let's also go to envelope 2, add a subtle attack, and then add this over the octave, and then go to the matrix tool and just pull in the range of the octave. I like +2, -2. It's a bipolar value, so it goes down 2 and then up 2 to create like a lasery tone. So it's like wah, wah, like that. I'll exaggerate so you guys can hear. Reshape this compressor a little bit. Let's do this like slow pitch bend. Sounds dope. So to me, we made a lot of dope sounds. Let's see how long this video is. I don't want to make this video too long. So in 45 minutes, you guys learned how to make really, really dope sounds. So shout out to Nest Acoustics. Go buy his course and support him. He gave me crazy game. I only watched like 2 videos and look at the sounds we're creating. So go support him. Thank you guys. This game from busyworksbeats.com. Peace out, guys.